Hello and welcome back to Speed Demon Painting. Today we are taking a look at the new Alliance faction battle group set, which was kindly sent to me by Warcradle Studios for review to play in Armoured Clash. These boxes of course come shrink wrapped, but I've gone ahead and taken that one off ahead of the review. They also have this nice sleeve on there that you can easily slide off, and as you can see this is a massive box because this is basically meant as your starter point for Armoured Clash if you're really interested in this faction. It comes with everything you need to start playing the game, which includes the full-sized rulebook, which comes in a softback A5. You also get this little pamphlet in there which takes you to the website of Armoured Clash, where you will find all the build instructions for these different units, and you will find all the rules and for this faction, which is called an Orbat document. You also get this neat map of the world which shows you which territories are held by which factions, so you can instantly see what the lore is like for your faction. This game does use bespoke dice, but in this starter set you're getting 2 baggies for a grand total of 24 action dice, which is plenty to play the game because even the biggest attacks won't reach that number. You also get this plastic sprue which has some range rulers on there, some objective markers, a turning template for some of the bigger land vehicles, and you basically get all of that in your starter set. And what you also are getting a lot of are bases, plenty of bases to put all of the infantry and bike units etc. on here. Inside you will also find this massive bag of resin which forms your big landship, which is your sort of Titanic unit for your faction, and in the case of the Alliance this is a giant driving fortress. You're also getting a Command and Conquest deck which is used in the full rule set rather, so you're good to go with just one purchase, which is why I love these box sets so much. We're also getting some of these larger square bases in there, as well as the new flying bases that we've seen in a previous review video as well, because there are some rotorcraft available to the units that you can take. On top of all of these different bases, you're also getting two extra sprues to form some extra terrain. No, sorry, you actually get 4 of them, I miscounted in this case, so you can actually have a bit of 10mm terrain should you not have some before. Now, I already have made a review of these plastic sprues, so if you want a more in-depth look at them, make sure you check out the other video I have up on the channel about the dystopian industrial set. And to round things off for the gaming aids, we get these token sets, which are these nice punch-out cardboard tokens to use in-game. And to show you a bit what you can do with the industrial terrain set, I've made this massive piece using multiple parts, so you can have some pretty decisive terrain on the table if you want to. Now, enough about that, let's take a look at the new plastics that are coming out for the Alliance. You're getting 4 identical sprues, the first one being the armoured sprues, where we can clearly make out the larger pieces of the tanks and the drop pod that is included on here, and we're also getting 4 sprues that are filled to the brim with different infantry units, because the Alliance does use an eclectic mix of different infantry regiments found throughout their regions. Now, the first sprue we'll be taking a look at are the infantry, and straight off the bat we can see these regular troopers which hail from South America, mostly Brazil, and they are there to provide you with the main bulk of your infantry. But that's not the only units you will find on there. You also have some Spanish units leading some war dogs. You also have some priest units as well that I actually plan to use on my landship, and you'll see why in a bit. And there's also some of the cool command units, of which you will get some cool spare ones as well if you want to embellish your big landship a bit. There's a very cool detail on these models. There are some mold lines that you will have to remove, but that is a fairly quick process, especially if you use a metal wire brush to sort of scrape them off. It won't damage the plastic detail too much, but it will take care of any mold lines, which is always a nice tip to get. Now, the only unit I can see on this sprue that seems to be a bit more involved when it comes to the assembly are the Destreza units, which is a sort of mech suit that they strap a Spanish guy into that walks forward and pierces the enemies with their claws. You also have a few smaller parts of these turrets, which go onto the different tanks, the charrettes that are included, and we have these mechanical dogs which are herded forward and actually count as a cavalry unit in-game. In addition to that, we're also getting the Alpini Rangers, which are sort of a long-range trooper that set up traps and that guide your troopers through difficult terrain, so a very cool unit to see as well. In addition, we also have these smaller parts that make up the tiniest tanks found in the game, the chariots, and we also have the little balloons that can either be assembled as these drones using this part, or they can have these sniper rifles on them where they're sort of strapped in, and they use the jump infantry rule to sort of get up to a high vantage point, not so much to be quick on the battlefield, but to be able to shoot across different buildings, so that's really, really cool to see. Also a small note, those tiny tanks are cavalry, so they can be used to capture objectives, which is something quite unique to the Alliance as well. Now if you want to field bigger tanks, don't worry, there is the armoured sprue, and as you can see it has this massive side piece to sort of create the bigger piece there. It sort of has this central canoe element in there that the side's attached to, and that canoe element can either take some smaller infantry units to represent the transporter, but it can also have these two halves of a cannon glued in there, so it has a long-range artillery option as well. The weird one, so to speak, is the drop pod here in the middle, because you get two central parts on this sprue, but you need to combine it with the two other central parts to create the central hull. And these drop pods are specifically made to drop in any French legionnaires that can be led by priests if you want to. You do not have to take this option, but if you want to, you can have your infantry led by priests. And yeah, there are some legionnaires on here that will come out of this drop pod and sort of wreak havoc on the enemy up close. In addition to the legionnaires, you're also getting these Italian jet bikes. These are mounted along with that very long front bit on the larger sort of rectangular bases, not on the square ones. And you get enough of them to create a unit of 5 with 2 different sprues. Now, the final build option you can make for the big tank is a variant that is sort of a driving chapel, and I will be using those pieces as well on my Ghent land fortress when I make a conversion of it. Speaking of, this is the baggie for the large land fortress. Now it can either become the Ghent or the Valencia version. As we open this thing up, you can instantly see how this is done. It compromises of these smaller turrets that are put on the 4 corners of the land ship. You do have a bit of flashing to remove in between the barrels. And for the front end, you can either install this large, looks like Solix looking weapon, or you can opt for the other piece here, which is sort of an assault ramp with some lovely detail on there with the fleur-de-lis that you can put on top of it. And then the top part has this large Solix generator that can actually be covered up with some missiles, but this is where I plan to make the conversion of the sort of driving cathedral rather than just being a driving chapel. This all gets glued to a large central part, but there are also some smaller parts to sort of make the casting more doable. We have the 4 smokestacks here, and this large disc is the part that usually covers up the top of the Ghent land fortress, because it sort of mimics those missile launchers that we know from the Dystopian Wars range. Those are all glued on top of these large side panels, which do have some rather chunky sprue gates, so yeah, you're going to have to cut that one loose. Make sure that you try to nip it off into small pieces, bit by bit, because cutting through that in one go is very hard on your nippers. Now both side pieces come with these sort of keys that will fit into holes from the central part, so it's not very difficult to assemble. Same with the assembly of the smokestacks, you have these sort of small holes that they will fit in one direction, so I'm not too worried about sort of messing this one up. And then finally we get this small bit which forms sort of the bit at the end where your troopers can stand on. Now after some assembly and painting, this is actually what I ended up with. You might think the color scheme is a bit weird, but it actually matches all the different French units I have in Dystopian Wars, in which they also represent this sort of papal force, which is why I leaned in very hard with this, with the big giant cross and the different priests and even a cardinal sitting on top of it. The big tank I chose to assemble as the Navarre cannon, if I'm not mistaken, and yeah, this is also a massive tank. The land ship itself might not be the biggest there is in game, but those armoured units definitely are. Now if you want to make a similar conversion, this is the piece I was referring to that I used to glue the cross on. All you really need to do is snip off a bit of the plastic there so that it sort of can sit in place, and then, yep, we've got this fairly straightforward conversion. And for the final part of the video, I've got some size comparisons compared to the other factions. As you can see, their larger behemoth unit won't win any size prizes because quite a few other ones that we've seen before are quite a bit bigger. The crown one also might not be quite as wide as the new Ghent Land Fortress, but it's not quite as long, the Ghent Land Fortress by comparison, but it is a very comparable unit. That was it mostly for this video review though. I do hope you enjoyed it. I will be painting some of the other Alliance units as time goes by, but right now it's time for me to focus more on my Imperium because I actually plan to do and use them in a battle report coming up around Christmas as well. So hopefully we can get that full force sorted out as well by then, and yeah, I'll be putting most of my effort into that. I've also got a few more smaller videos coming up as well, like the reviews for the different aircraft for the Alliance, but also one for the Russian faction actually, for the Commonwealth. So if you want to see those videos, definitely subscribe to the channel for when they drop. That was it for me for today though. I do hope you find this video review helpful. If you did, remember to give it a thumbs up, and I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, bye!